questions, we can start from there. My name is Messin Sadak Reye, and that's Nuwapic or Nuwapawi for He Who Reveals the Truth of Ra or Re of Ancient Kemet or Egypt. So I'm a student teacher, the master teacher, and I'm just here to offer my degree of understanding of the doctrine. So, like I said before, if any of y'all had any questions concerning our doctrine, I'd be more than happy to start there.
I would like to ask you a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to know about more than just Christianity.
Okay.
So, by me knowing him being a part of this, and he's been talking to me about it for so long, then I'm interested in, finding out what's what, so I can decide which way I want to go.
Right. Yeah.
Even though I think there's some good or some righteousness in all of them, but
right.
Still, you got to make a decision. You can't go 2 or 3 different ways, but you can learn as many ways, as you want to about, many different things, so you can decide on what's what. So that's where I'm at. I'm really trying to learn about it. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting because it's like when you begin to look for things outside of the confinements of Christianity, you got to take into consideration that we were first on this planet, and we are at the origin of all civilizations and spiritual practices. Okay. This is why you will find black people gravitate towards either more science, Hebrew Israelites, or Nuwapians, or Islam, because we can identify with all of those aspects of consciousness. See what I'm saying? So really, we're not in the position where we condemn somebody for wanting to be a Muslim or a Hebrew, because we understand that genetically you have a link to those spiritual ideologies. See what I'm saying? So it's really up to you to make that decision which one of these facets you identify with, or which one you're drawn towards.
Okay.
See, so really it's just a thing of you coming into knowledge of self and you reading and picking up, all that you can, and from that point you will feel gravitated towards a certain part of the doctrine. One of the good things about Malachi Z. is he walked through each of those schools of thought and gave you the truth of each religion and each spiritual practice by way of right sound reasoning. Okay. So even as a Nuwapian, we have Nuwapians in the community. Some gravitate more towards Islam, some gravitate more towards the Hebrew school of thought, but they're still a part of the family. Because to be a Nuwapian doesn't necessarily mean that you are following us in totality, but you can still be a part of the community as long as you accept right knowledge. Because like I say, the master teacher walked us through each of those schools of thought. So it's like, if you want to be a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, it's all right, just come here and do it, so that we can be one and be unified. You study and you receive this knowledge and this level of understanding to make the decision for yourself where you gravitate towards by way of your own spirit.
Right. And see, that's what I know that will happen. If that's the way for me, it's going to happen. You will know it.
Right.
You would know it even more than somebody telling you that's the way, or this is it. You're going to know it. Right. Excuse me.
Yes.
Coming out of Christianity, what would be a good book to refer to, because I have family members that are in the same boat as you is. So what book would you recommend? Or because I know when I first came into the doctrine, I was told to read the Holy Tablets. And I read the Holy Tablets and I tried to just read it, and then I kind of confused myself, but it was I understood everything that it was saying in the Holy Tablets. And then the more I started to come to class and study, then I would remember what I read in the Holy Tablets. So I know the Holy Tablets is one, but are there any other books that you
there's 2 others that I can think of right off the bat. One of them is Jesus Found in Egypt? And the other one is Christianity Black or Is It White? Because that book is right out there on the shelf, and it actually breaks down how Jesus or that figure correlates with ancient Kemet. But what did you say was the issue with the Holy Tablets?
No. I was saying that when I first read the Holy Tablets and I was coming out of Christianity, I was trying to, like, I could understand it, but it was kind of confusing because it was just a little bit confusing, but I was able to, like, pick up the more. I picked it up as I studied more, and I was able to understand, okay, this is what he was talking about. This
Right.
is what he was talking about.
Because the thing about the Holy Tablets, when he touches on that in the chapter, it's called The Christians. And that story literally gives you the complex version of the simplified version that you find in the King James Version of the Bible. Because the King James Version of the Bible leaves out so much that it's like mythological. And it's unbelievable to see, okay, how can this being actually heal people and things of that nature. When you go into the Holy Tablets, it's science given to you. And that science actually justifies that story, so to speak.
Do you know like a specific, if you know off like the top of your head, do you know where it actually talks about that in the Holy Tablet? Like the chapters or in
Right. It's all through the chapter, but just for an example, in the King James Version of the Bible, it'll tell you that Lazarus was risen from the dead, but in the Holy Tablets, it breaks down that he was never even dead. This was an actual ritual that was performed by the Essenes or the Magus, which was a sacred order that branched from the order of Melchizedek, which branched from the order of Ma'at back in Egypt. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So just certain things like that, of that nature, you know, it breaks down in totality what really happened and what went down, which makes the story, now you can know the truth rather than believe in, you know, what you hear in the Bible. So, like, the Holy Tablets is what really helped me with the whole Jesus story. Because it made it more real, because it was complex. It wasn't just simplified. You know, it broke down everything that Yeshua went through when he was younger all the way up until when he was older. And like I say, it gave science. The problem with the King James Version of the Bible is it doesn't give you any science. So you end up believing in the mythological story based on the mythological character. And it also, what the Holy Tablets does is it tells you about the people who came after Yeshua or Jesus and propagated in his name, which we to this day look at as though he's Jesus, but he's not, like Paul. Paul is basically the author of the whole New Testament. So a lot of things that we read that we think Jesus is talking or Yeshua is really Paul. There was also another Roman by the name of Cleophas, who was a descendant of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. He was another person that paraded as if he was Jesus. And this is, from these two figures, you get your New Testament. So a lot of things that's written in those books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, Ephesians, came from people who were propagating under the name of Yeshua, but it wasn't really Yeshua. Okay. And the Holy Tablets gets into all that.
Is that, I'm saying the right part of the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Right. Yeah. The Holy Tablets also speaks about the Dead Sea Scrolls because, like I mentioned, the Essenes or the Magus, this was a sacred order that actually lived in a separate community that, so to speak, protected the children of Israel. And these were your astrologers. These were those men who charted the stars, and from that astrological science, they were able to know that the Messiah was on his way to be reincarnated, so to speak. In the Bible, it says the 3 wise men saw the star, and they followed that star. The Holy Tablets breaks down the whole story of how these were actually astrologers, and they understood that everything that takes place on the terrestrial plane can be charted from the astral plane. So they were, like I say, astrologers, and they knew that science. So that's how they were able to, you know, determine where the Messiah will be incarnated at and all those things. And they kept records. They stored everything and they wrote everything. And one of the things that they did was they recorded the story of Yeshua and what the children of Israel went through on these papers or papyrus. And the Romans eventually sought to kill the Essenes, so they hid them in caves, and it was recently found a couple decades ago, and this is what we know to be the Dead Sea Scrolls. So the Dead Sea Scrolls were written by these Essenes or the Magus, which was a sacred order.
Can you put it up on the computer?
Can you pull what up on
Can
the
that
computer?
be pulled up the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Yeah, you can pull the Dead Sea Scrolls up on the computer, but it's complicated because it's been interpreted and translated, and it's kind of hard to really understand the root of the truth, you know. So, you know, basically what we do is we use the formula of experience, evidence, and reasoning to see if something aligns and if it's validated. In the Holy Tablets, once you put it to those 3 tests, it is validated. You know, when you compare it to historic layers and layers of information, it's validated by way of experience, evidence, and reasoning.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so, when it comes to like name changing, because I know like names are interchangeable and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, with like the story of Enki and Enlil, relating that to the King James version of the Bible, what story would Enki and Enlil be related to the King James version of the Bible?
The conflict, there's a lot of contradictions that show up in the Old Testament. One time God says this, and one time God says that. That is because this is based off the conflict that was going on between Enki and Enlil. To be more specific, the story of the Tower of Babel was basically a disagreement between Enki and Enlil, because Nimrod was trying to connect 2 extraterrestrials on high, and those followers of Nimrod were also trying to do the same thing by using the Ark of the Covenant, which was really an antenna, to connect to those extraterrestrials. And they were trying to connect to Enki. And Enki was willing to connect to them. But Enlil wanted to control those beings or those humans that were under Nimrod. So he didn't want them to connect to those extraterrestrials by way of Enki. So what he did was he confounded their language, he confounded their tongues. So they were confused amongst each other. That's why it's called Babylon, Tower of Babel. They spoke Babel. So now they couldn't communicate because Enki was really trying to teach them Nuwapic, Nuwapiwi. And those tones are very powerful in that day and time. And Nimrod was one of the first rulers to actually misuse the image of Ra or Re or Ennu of that time, which would be the Sumerian deity or the Sumerian Most High. He made those graven images and he used those images of the Most High for himself because he was, you know, his own deity, his own God. He was also a Mason. So the Euro Masons who take the Afro Masonry that comes out of Egypt really are following after Nimrod because he was one of the first people to reverse the truth, which would technically be tricknology. And Enlil knew that if these beings really overstood Nuwapiwi, it'd be chaos because you would have these mortals acting as gods like Nimrod. So to answer your question, the Tower of Babel will be one of those instances of Enki and Enlil being placed in, in the Old Testament. They don't really, tell you about that in the King James Version of the Bible. They just say it's God. All that is God, which causes confusion. Any other questions?
Now, is this Euro Mason not as melanated as the others?
It's tricknology. Like, okay, when you look at a lot of the logos and symbols of these corporations, ironically, you see pyramids and you see eyes. That's just a fact. Like, why is there so many eyes and pyramids in these logos? And you also see suns. These are all symbols that originated with us in ancient Egypt because it has its root in Ma'at, which is the ultimate order. So these orders, which would be the Masonic orders that we overstood and gave us our science to build these pyramids, was taken by Europeans such as Alexander the Great. Once he invaded Egypt and took those symbols, he brought them back into Rome and he used them for his own purpose.
They're not as melanated then.
Right. What do you mean when you say they're not as melanated?
Well, I know everybody supposedly came through one bloodline.
Okay.
Most people.
Okay.
So they're not quite the original people. The ones you speak of is Euro Asian.
Okay. Well, they have their root in ancient Rome, like I say. So these would be quote unquote Gentiles or Caucasians.
Okay.
So when you say they're not as melanated, they would be Caucasians or white people. But the problem is, a lot of your modern day Afro-Masonry is being controlled by the Euro-Masonic order. So some of them realize it, some of them don't, that you still have white people in control of your masonry. A lot of the black masons that you see walking around the street know nothing about this. That there are white people that are in charge of your order. That's why we trust in Partner Babdi Anun Malachi York, because he resurrected the right ancient Egyptian order, and we fall under him. Because he is the master teacher, and is coming with the right and exact doctrine that comes out of ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt. Because the less melanated or the Caucasian people have supplanted themselves at the root of everything. Does that kind of clear it up?
Yeah. So would it be safe to say that the Europeans are now trying to pull the melanated brothers and little by little into their Masonic orders?
They have pulled
I keep
the
trying to
melanated
explain it
brothers.
to them. They don't understand it. The
Right.
brothers that are wearing the jackets with the umps,
Exactly.
why they're being all of a sudden welcomed.
Right. White supremacy would not even be as strong as it is now if it weren't for black devils. Because it's actually the black devil that keeps white supremacy thriving the way it is. If it was just the white man and the white man alone, he wouldn't be successful. We can even go back to the plantation. It was those black slaves who went and told Massa what was going on in the field. See what I'm saying? That same thing shows up today, but we have black devils who play out the role of these white devils. See what I'm saying? So, yeah, they are pulling in black people to do their bidding or to work for them.
Meritorious manumission to celebrate the snitches.
Right. Yes.
Can you explain how Anu is really like the son, but when we're Sean Anu, he's in like human form. I don't understand that, and I don't understand like how Deb and Luke and like how they're in human form. And deities, they're in human form, but they're really like the sun, the sky, and stuff like that. Can you explain that?
Right. Okay, what you gotta understand is that Geb, Nut, all your original deities are personifications of elements of nature.
Okay.
See what I'm saying? Because these ancient Egyptians identified with nature. Nature was their God. So God, in a sense, in ancient Kemet, would be several aspects of nature. Because nature is the ultimate proof of a higher being. Because when you come into this world, you need nature. Nature has everything that you need. See what I'm saying? You want to drink water, food, everything comes from the ground by way of nature. Vitamin D, vitality coming from the sun. So a being, anything you need comes from nature. And when the child comes into the world, everything he needs comes from his mother. That's why we equate the black woman as God, because she's symbolic of nature. So with the ancient Egyptians understanding that nature being the God, the original deities will have to be equated to a certain aspect of nature. See what I'm saying? So Geb would be the ground, Shu would be the air, Tefnut would be the moisture, so on and so forth. Anu was a title given to the Most High of that time. But even the tone Anu was coming out of ancient Samaria. See what I'm saying? But when you talk about Re or Ra, that would be the ancient Egyptian title that's given to that Most High deity. Now everything on this planet is fed by way of the sun. Without the sun, this planet wouldn't exist. So the Most High will be attributed to the sun. That's why Re is attributed to the sun, and it trickles down into the English language with the rays of the sun being shown out on planet Earth. That's where they get that word ray, the light traveling from Re or Amun Re of ancient Kemet.
Okay, so when people say the Most High, they don't know that they're referring to the sun? Is what I'm trying to get at. Because basically that's what they're referring to, right?
In a sense, you know, even when you get into the title of the King James Version of the Bible, it's called the Holy Bible. That word holy comes from Latin Heliopolis, which was the title given to the city of the sun in ancient Kemet. See what I'm saying? So, and when you get into Bible, you get into biblos, papyrus. So these are really papers of the sun. So in that sense, they don't know that they're referring to that aspect of nature. See what I'm saying? Does that kind of clear it up?
Yeah.
The so-called God is an omnipotent force that manifests on this physical plane as natural nature. And that's proof that there is a higher being or a higher intelligence. The omniverse is too mathematically precise for there not to be a higher intelligence. And you could tell that by way of nature and how nature's set up. Any other questions? Yes.
Okay, now, she just brought up another question that I had actually a long time ago, but I just never asked it. When it came to like, I know they came here to get gold for their planet. Is that still going on now?
In the Man from Planet Risk, it talks about how the mission was completed.
Oh, okay.
So it's not still going on.
Right, okay.
Right.
So like, what is, and I only ask that because now it seems that gold is so like, it's such everybody wants gold. They want it. And I'm trying to figure out like, why?
Right.
What is the importance of gold? Why is it so important?
Well, okay. I know gold can be a conductor of energy because everything that you see around here in industry is backed up by a natural resource. Even when you get into cars, it's backed up by oil. And when you talk about gold, gold is a conductor of energy and it's a precious metal, so to speak. So I can't really get into it like I want to because I don't really understand it fully. But I do know that gold is a conductor of energy, and with certain amounts of gold, you can build an industry because it's backed up by that natural resource. So, and that was the original form of currency, gold. But they attached paper to represent the gold.
Right.
And it's so detrimental now because they took away the gold from the paper, so now we just are exchanging paper, which is literally just a federal note, so it has no value. You used to be able to redeem money in gold. You used to be able to take your money to the bank and get gold in exchange for that, but now you can't because it's just a federal note. It's an instrument of debt. But yeah, like I say, when you have gold, you have the foundation of an industry because you can use it to conduct energy. So you can generate, a lot by way of this natural resource. So that's just one of the reasons why they have it. But it's so much, more into it. Also by way, like how it deals with light, because the Riskians, they wanted the gold so that they can have the particles from the gold reflect the light from the sun, because the sun was destroying their planet by way of the ultraviolet rays.
Right, now see, that's what I was getting at. Because it seems like they over in Africa trying to get gold. Like, are they trying to get the gold to protect them from the sun?
I don't know
Okay.
specifically. I don't know if that's a reason. But like I say, it can be used to conduct energy, things of that nature.
So it would be to our advantage now to accumulate as much gold as you can.
Well, I mean, if you accumulate the gold, you have to know how to use it. See what I'm saying? So it's not just about, well, what will be the purpose of you accumulating that gold? See what I'm saying?
Like the future when the dollar bill becomes, what am I trying to say? When the dollar bill becomes,
Right.
When the value just drops to where we won't have paper money.
Right.
So we'll be
exactly.
more for the future than now.
Right. That would be a method, because once the dollar drops, all we're going to have is natural resources to exchange goods and services. So for you to accumulate a certain amount of gold wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea, because gold is the foundation of your economy, and that's why the economy is falling, because the gold was stripped from under, so now it's falling from the top down. So it would be wise to accumulate as many as natural resources as you can, because if you really study the Federal Reserve and the steps they took to manipulate the economy, they came with the Gold Seizure Act in the early 1900s. And that said, turn in all your gold. And to disregard this claim will be punishable by imprisonment. This
Maybe.
is the early 1900s. Say what?
It said maybe.
Maybe.
Like everything else, it had maybe.
Okay,
10,000 or 10 years,
10 years.
maybe.
Okay, thank you for that. So they were saying you might be able to, or you might be locked up if you don't turn in your gold. So this is why they did that, because they know if this natural resource is in your hands, then you are empowered because you can make certain moves with that gold. See what I'm saying? But like I say, you will have to know just exactly how to use it and what to do with it. See, because I'm pretty sure that, you know, once the dollar does fall, certain natural resources as gold will be accepted by certain rulers in Africa, because it's a natural resource and they have the understanding of what you can do with that natural resource. And everything, like I said, started with the gold, the silver, and the oil. That's the basis of our economy. So, yeah, to answer your question, it would, you know, that would be wise. But you just gotta, you know what you're doing with it.
Yeah. And right now, I think the price of gold is cheaper now than it's going to be later on.
Right,
That's
exactly.
what I would say would be an advantage.
Yeah, the best thing to do when it comes to the so-called conspiracy is to investigate the Federal Reserve, because these are the bankers, these are the families, the European families who claim the Jewish religion not by ethnicity but by belief, meaning they're not really Jews, but they just claim the Jewish religion to receive validity. That way, if anybody comes out and condemns them, they can fight back by calling you a Hitler. And by doing that, they're already in the favor of the public because of what happened during the so-called Jewish Holocaust. So the Federal Reserve, J.P. Morgan, and I forget the other dude's name, but these were your pioneers of the Federal Reserve Act, which was an act passed in the early 1900s, which gave the power of banks to these families. So what you have is all of our banks are controlled by the central banks, and the central banks is not controlled by Congress, it's controlled by literally a family of so-called Jews. It's Rothschild, Morgans, Rockefellers, and it's others.
So do you expect the banking systems at some time or another to crash?
Yeah. It's so easy for a bank to crash because what they go by is what is called the fractional reserve banking system. This system basically says that you make a deposit, you give me $100, somebody else comes to make a $100 withdrawal, I give them your money. And when you come back for your money, I give you somebody else's money. This is the system that the bank perpetuates. So what will happen is, if everybody comes to get their money at the same time, the banks won't have money to give. And this actually happened in 1913, I don't think it was 1913, but it was the early 1900s, and it would fuel the Great Depression. And it's so messed up because it was started by a rumor. Like I say, J.P. Morgan, he knew that the banks were easily destroyed. So he set a rumor out there saying that this bank is bankrupt. And he put it out in the media. And once the people found out about this, like anybody else, they all rushed to the banks to get their money. And when they did that, that's when bankruptcy fluctuated throughout the whole New York City. And businesses had to close down, foreclosure, they had to call back loans and all that stuff. And it was what fueled the Great Depression. And then they even increased the money supply to make it worse, because the more money you have, the less the dollar is worth. And from that tragedy, that's when they all came together and formulated what we know as the Federal Reserve Act, which gave them permission to put the power of the banks into their hands, to private interests.
Now I understand how that happened.
Right. Any other questions?
Did you just describe propaganda related to the mandate from Noble Drew Ali,
Which mandate?
where we supposedly recorded the land being given back to the people from Geneva?
No.
From Cuba, rather.
No.
When you said that the Caucasians went out and proliferated stories and sent everybody into whatever, and they went out and did things with their resources, it came from them saying things that there was a crash because of them saying things?
It was one financial luminary by the name of J.P. Morgan, and he who sent the rumor out about a prominent bank in New York going bankrupt. See what I'm saying?
So are you saying that's what fueled the stock market crash?
Right. But it was all a plot. It was all a conspiracy because he knew what would happen. This is leading up. These are the events leading up to the passing of the Federal Reserve Act, which was pushed through Congress during the Christmas recess, which justified them having control over our money. This is something that the Federal Reserve has been fighting to do all the way back since King George III. The original so-called forefathers of this country didn't want, our money supply to be in the hands of private interests. That's really against the Constitution. So it's unlawful. See what I'm saying?
No, I understand that.
Right. So what, I'm trying to follow what.
I just was asking you to reiterate what you said. I got a better grasp of it this time.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. When they spread the rumor, and by them using one person's money for another, when everybody came, they didn't have, they didn't have the money because they didn't have a chance to use somebody's money for somebody else.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Me and the brothers was building this morning. Well, yesterday. And he was talking about, one of the brothers talking about when the crafts crashed in Roswell. He said they had took some crystals, and Creo had went back and asked them for the crystals. Which I know that when you talk about crystals, it's information on crystals. So is there anything more what was on those crystals? Because that was my question after you said what you said. So did we ever find out exactly what was on the crystals that the government had that they didn't give back?
Who took the crystals?
I think he said what's some form of the government.
Right.
Right.
Right. The Roswell, New Mexico event, the reason why we know what we know is because they put it out there, because they were the ones who seen that, because it was a farmer who witnessed it, and he went to the government and did what he did. He told the officials, and they, from there, went to investigate to see what happened. And they knew off rip what had happened. This is an extraterrestrial craft that came down to planet Earth. So they do have that information. They even told everybody in that area that don't speak about this. It was forbidden to even speak about what they seen, and it was punishable by imprisonment, and they even threatened a lot of their lives if they told about it. See what I'm saying? So it was a lot of secrecy that was given to that event. So to answer your question, they do have what was on that ship, because they did a complete wipe down and sweep of everything that happened. And the only reason why I know this to give to you, because there was a officer of the military who came out and spoke about it. And there's several documentaries that you can seek out on YouTube and even on Netflix now that talks about the Roswell incident. And that's because the master teacher tells us about grays, and he gives us the biological makeup of these extraterrestrial biological entities, which is what they really are. So when you do that, when you propagate that, people look at you like you're crazy as if this is foreign information. But you can easily back it up with the Roswell incident, because this is actually documented by the government that there were beings found on this ship that in the description of these beings correlate with what the master teacher tells us in the Holy Tablets, Men from Planet Risk, and other scrolls.
Okay, so basically, at this point in time, they really never said what was on the crystal.
Right.
with the information that was in it.
Right.
Yeah, 'cause I had some other things that was going on when I asked the question. I'm like, what was taking place at that time? Was you talking about the computer, or was that the
Right.
information for that, or
That would be interesting to figure out.
Right, exactly.
What took place.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, brother.
Around that time, they came out with a lot of movies too,
Right. Yeah.
to throw propaganda, to make it seem like this is foreign, this is unreal. That's when the majority of your alien sci-fis came out. Yes.
And I think it was Man from Planet Risk. They said the reason why for the crash was because of the Philadelphia experiment. Somebody kept flipping the switch on and off, and they was falling from the sky.
That may be possible. I'm not sure, honestly, to tell you the truth, if that's the reason. But it does sound valid. But I'm not sure. Any other questions?
Oh, I got a question. Okay, so I know, I was reading in, again, the Holy Tablet, and it was explaining, I think it was the Holy Tablet, it was explaining that you can enter the inside of the earth in the North and the South Pole. So, because I know the Caucasus where they have to go. Like, are they leaving from just off the surface of the earth and going inside, or do they have to go completely?
Yeah, some of them are going into the surface of this planet just to hide from the sun, because the sun literally destroys them. The master teacher explained how they first wanted to go to Mars, but the Martian environment isn't conducive for their genome, so they couldn't make that trip. So you do have some of them that are taking residence underground by way of the caverns that do lead to the subterranean world or the underworld. And it just go back to them being in the Caucasus Mountains. A lot of those mountains led to those underground caverns. So, just anything to get away from the sun, because it's not necessarily them having to get off this planet. They got to get away from the sun, because the sun destroys them because they don't have the amounts of chromium that we have.
That's right.
We have chromium, so we don't corrode, we don't crack, we don't break. That's why I say black don't crack.
That's right.
Because of chromium. Yes, sir.
You mentioned about Mars. I was reading one of the updates we was talking about. It said the experiment was taking place on Mars, right? The Adam project, where the question was, if Adam was created here, what experiment took place on Mars? And so I was like, I was going to ask that today. So did you happen to catch that one?
Mars was a stopping point. It was like they set up base on Mars.
Right.
So a certain part of the experiment was done on Mars, and from there seeds were transported onto Earth. And the other part of the experiment was completed on Earth.
Okay, so that basically that's where they was getting all of the beginning, when you talk about the Bible and all that, so forth. So I got you. Okay.
Right.
All right. Cool. Thank you. Talk about it.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I seen on television, I don't quite have this right, but they showed a planet that they said they found where there's water and air. Do you know anything about that?
The new Earth, or it was like the second Earth or something like that?
It was just recently, like maybe within the last month. I don't know, they was talking about being where man can, they discovered that man can live on this planet. Yeah.
I did hear about that. It's kind of hard to really accept what NASA gives us because they're so far ahead of what we think they are. We can tell that by what they put in the movies. So it's hard for me to accept what NASA says because that could just be a piece of a puzzle that they want us to know, and it also can be propaganda served for the purpose of a distraction of something else. See what I'm saying? So it's very much possible. But there's several planets that we can inhabit as Negroids or black people. So like I say, it could be a distraction from something that we are coming into knowledge of so that we can focus on this planet that they say they just found. See what I'm saying?
I met, once I was in this office, and there was a Caucasian lady that worked there and a Caucasian man that came in for business. And they both had red hair. And they both was talking about what the time they had getting to work and rushing to work because they can't bear the sun. So they was trying to get out the sun. So from what they were saying, it seemed like it had something to do with, you know, them having red hair. It had something to do with the eyes and the hair connecting some kind of way that don't bear the sun good.
Okay.
They have to live staying out of the sun as much as possible.
Right. The thing about that is hair is controlled by melanin. Melanin is the chemical that determines the potency or the structure, texture of hair and skin color. And the thing about it is, we as black people, because of our high levels of melanin, we can be compared to plants because the plants have chlorophyll. What is the purpose of chlorophyll? Chlorophyll synthesizes light from the sun, and from that light the plant is able to grow. Our melanin is just like the chlorophyll. So when we get that light from the sun, it's synthesized into vitamin D. But the Caucasian, even the redhead Caucasians, don't have that level of melanin. So that ultraviolet light actually begins to harm them. See what I'm saying? And it doesn't really process into vitamin D like it does naturally for us. So it's even with the redheads, brunettes, you know, things of that nature. You have a question?
Man, don't worry, let me come back to
All right.
Because I was listening to what you were saying. I'm like, oh, man.
Yeah. Okay. You can take at least one more question. Pass class to Brother Tahuti. If y'all got a question. If not, we just go from there. Yes.
I have a question. I hear we speak of, I know you explained what's what with, you know, blacks and whites and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But do it have anything, well, I know what you're saying don't have anything to do with this, but I want to say, you know, are you prejudiced against whites?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, no, I'm not saying I am. I'm just confirming the question. So that's your question?
Yeah, that's my question.
Am I prejudiced against whites?
Yeah.
No.
To
I'm not, but I'm just thinking of a way to explain why, because I get that question a lot being in the Nuwaubian.
Okay.
And the thing about it is, we're not just telling you what we think the white man is. We're backing it up by way of biology, by way of science, and above everything else, historically. You know, their color has not harmed us. Their color has not enslaved us. You know, their color has not oppressed us. You know, the color has not manipulated the banking system. It's them, the heart chakra of the Caucasus that infiltrated all this deception and devilishment. See what I'm saying? So I'm not prejudiced towards you just because you're white. I'm prejudiced, or I'm on guard, or I'm paranoid about your presence by way of you and your own actions and how I relate your actions to history. And it's even more so justified by way of science, because the way you think isn't the way I think. The way you process information isn't the way I process information. And that can be backed up by science. Because oftentimes when I say that it's not right and exact to mix in with a white woman, I'm looked at as being racist. But I could back that up by way of science compared to history and above else biology when it comes to that, because of who they mix with. So if I mix with you, then that means people that are at the tip of your ancestral lineage is now in my ancestral lineage, which just so happens to be dogs, canines, and animals. See what I'm saying? So, no, I'm not prejudiced. We're not prejudiced. Anything that we tell you about the Caucasian is validated by way of science, history, and biology.
I figured that. I just really wanted to know, you know, sometimes
Right.
you just need a question answered.
Right.
So you can know for sure, but
Right.
I understand what you're saying.
The biggest thing to do, even if you go as far as to say the white man is the devil, the white man is this, you have to back it up. Or else you're going to seem like a conspiracy theorist or a racist.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, with that, I'm gonna pass class to Brother Tahuti, if he's ready. I'll see him. All right, I'm gonna pass class to Brother Tahuti. Thank you. Wadu.